So on number 5, 6, and 7, we're going to graph equations, linear equations. In order to graph these linear equations, we first need to get them into the slope-intercept form. In other words, we're going to have to solve each one of these equations for y in terms of x, or get y isolated by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and start by solving number 5 for y. So I'm going to rewrite it. 4x plus 2y equals 12. Now, I'm wanting to run through my steps. I have no fractions to clear. There's nothing to distribute. My next step is to combine all my like terms on either side of the line. There's nothing to combine. So now what I want to do is start isolating my y term by first adding and subtracting any other terms. So right now I've got a positive 4x, so the inverse of adding 4x will be to subtract 4x on either side of my equation. Now when I look on the right side of my equation, my 12 is not a like term to a 4x, so I'm going to put the minus 4x kind of over to the side. And that leaves me with 2y equals 12 minus 4x. Okay, so 2y equals 12 minus 4x. The last thing I do is I'm still isolating my y. Right now my y is being multiplied by 2, so I'm going to divide every term by 2. And I'm left with y equals 6 minus 2x. Okay, now I just have to rewrite it into slope-intercept form. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to circle each of my terms so I'll know what sign they have. And my equation in slope-intercept form is y equals negative 2x plus 6. Now I can go ahead and fill in my slope and my intercept up in the problem. So my slope is the negative 2. So I'm going to write negative 2. And my y-intercept is positive 6. Okay, so now that I've got my slope and my y-intercept identified, I'm going to go ahead and graph it. And the way we do it is we move with m, and we begin with b. So my b is 6, my y-intercept is 6. I'm going to begin with that. Sadly, that's kind of off the graph. So I'm going to go ahead and estimate about where my beginning would be up there at 6. And then I'm moving. And what I'm moving is I'm going down 2 and over 1. So I'm going to go down 2 and over 1 and put another dot. Down 2 and over 1 and put another dot. And now I can connect my 3 dots and see my line. Okay, so go ahead and solve number 6 first. Solve it for y in terms of x, meaning you'll have an x on the right-hand side. Identify your slope and y-intercept and graph it. Pause your video to do this and then check back for the answer. Okay, a couple of things to notice is that there was no y-intercept on the equation, so our b is 0. We're going to start our graph where it's going to cross the y-axis at 0. And also our slope was a negative, so we'll be moving down 3 and over to the right 1. Okay, number 7, go ahead and solve number 7 for y in terms of x. Identify your slope and y-intercept, graph it. Pause your video to do all this and then come back and check on the answer. Okay, the biggest trick on this one was when you rewrote your equation, when you were solving it, is to make sure that the negative sign went with the 2x and then graph it. Now number 8 actually gives you information about the data. It tells us how much our y's decrease every time our x's decrease. And it also gives us an ordered pair of when x equals 0, what y equals, which is 4. So make a table using that ordered pair. Figure out your slope and y-intercept and graph it. Pause your video to do this and then check back for the answer. Okay, so number 8 required several steps in your thinking. First, you had to identify the ordered pair, then change your x's by 3 and your y's by 6 going down, and then graph the information. Now on number 9, 10, and 11, we're just getting more and more practice on it. So go ahead and pause your video and complete number 9, 10, and 11, then check back for the information. All 3 of these were fairly straightforward. You just had to do a couple of steps to get to your final answer with the equation. Just check and make sure that you got all 3 of the answers correct. And if not, look and see where you went wrong. On number 12, it'll be very straightforward. They've given you 2 points. You can use your slope formula for the slope. And then they've been kind enough to give you the y-intercept because they gave you the ordered pair with the 0 in the x value. That's always your y-intercept. So pause your video and go ahead and write the equation for number 12, then check back for the explanation. Number 12 was pretty straightforward as long as you took care with your minus negatives on the slope formula. And now the very last one, number 13, it just puts your information into more of a verbal description, a real life situation. It's going to take you just kind of thinking through and puzzling through some of the different things to make sure you get all the information you need for the equation. So pause your video and do that, and then check back for the final explanation. So on 13, we took the 2 pieces of data that they gave us in the situation and created a table. We also used those 2 pieces of data in order to find the slope using the slope formula. And then finally, we counted back. Once we figured out what the slope was, we counted backwards to get to 0 on the table to find our initial phi. When I have my slope and my y-intercept, my initial phi, put together the equation, and then finally for part D, plugged in 7 for my x, for my hours, to get the total cost for 7 hours of work.